Sick World News.
Jim Cornette's been going on and on about this book called, it was written in the 30s. I think it was called Barnums of Bounce, and I bought it for Kindle. I've been reading it. I think it's pretty good. Have you guys read it?
I hadn't even heard of it, so...
Goddamn motherfuckers, I've heard of motherfucking giving away the goddamn business. I don't know, these 1930 motherfuckers aren't guilty as well. How are you supposed to draw a goddamn dime if they're just giving away the business and shit? Fucking, oh, fuck all you flip mud show motherfuckers, and these guys writing a goddamn book about it? Fuck you, motherfucker, for ruining my goddamn business before I could get in the goddamn business.
As you can tell, it kind of breaks kayfabe.
All right, well, welcome to 10 Bell Pod.
Goddamn.
The podcast where we discuss and biography deceased professional mat technicians.
You gonna mix that up every time?
We'll try.
We haven't used grapplers yet. Grapplers.
Synonyms, we need them.
I am Nick Alexander, and I've got big balls. Beside me, Michael Loving.
We've got big balls.
And sitting across from us, the king of camp style, breaker of tents, Khaleesi of the 123, mother of dragons, the Man Scout Jake Batting.
And she has big balls.
I'm just glad you didn't give any spoilers on
Arguably
Game of the Thrones. Game of the Thrones?
Game of the Thrones. Hey, have you seen Game of the Thrones?
My favorite movie is the Star Wars, so.
So thanks, everyone, for listening to today's show. While you have your phones out, please rate and review us wherever you're listening. That helps us pop up in the podcasting algorithms, which will eventually help us take over the world. Hell Hydra. Today we are covering hardcore legend, ECW hero, a man who has the all-time record for standing up in the middle of a shoot interview. Balls Mahoney.
That dude can act out shit. I think he would do really good in improv because Balls could just rip on stuff over and over and over.
John Reitner was born April 11th, 1972 in Spring Lake Heights, New Jersey.
On this day, also, Benjamin L. Hooks was named to the FCC Federal Communications, and the USSR performed underground nuclear tests on the same day. So Balls was born on a very kind of boring day.
Well, 1972, if we're going to do cool stuff that happened in the years, my uncle placed 5th in the shot put in that year's Olympics in 1972.
Oh, yep.
So there you go. That'll help you out a little bit. Since you couldn't find anything, I had some personal experience.
What was it on that day? Because that's all. See, God damn it.
Well, you were struggling.
Tell the story right.
Okay, sorry. The next time that you're treading water, I won't throw a life preserver out.
That day sucked.
So Jonathan was a lifelong fan of pro wrestling, as was his best friend, Chris Candido, who he met playing Little League Baseball.
I love the story in Chris's shoot where he talks about the first day he met Balls. And I think Balls had like a Roddy Piper t-shirt on. And Chris was by a baseball field and Chris wasn't playing. But Balls just walked through the middle of a baseball game and a ball was like hit as Balls, like a ground ball, and it slipped through like the outfield where Balls was walking, and then Balls just like saw this ground ball that was in play, and Balls just grabbed the baseball before the fielder could get to it, picked up the ball and just threw it over his shoulder.
This thing.
And walked over to Chris and started talking about professional wrestling.
As you can tell, Jake said balls a lot right then. And I'm just going to go ahead and get past this. The commentators clearly love Balls Mahoney as they did because puns were plentiful. I'm going to go ahead and say a bunch that are out there so we can just get that shit out of the way. All right.
Like an improv scene, you know? Should we do 1, 2, 3, 4, zip, zap, zop before we start?
I mean, we could. Okay, Joey Styles. Oh, he smacked Balls. There's a time and place to smack Balls, and I'm not sure it's right now. Balls is hot. Ooh, sweaty too. Michael Cole on this one. I think Balls has just been deflated. We're going to find out. Will Mahoney beat Sandman or will Sandman lick Balls? That's Rick Rude. And I mean, this is the easiest one in the world. Big dick is choking balls. All right.
Oh, because his name is Balls, and also that's slang for testicles.
No. You missed the whole premise.
Oh. I love their kind of meeting story because I feel like 99% of the friends I have in my life is because pro wrestling came up and I was comfortable enough to be like, you like pro wrestling? And then we were friends ever since.
Friends, that's how 90% I get my bookings in stand-up comedy. Like, you're also a pro wrestler? I like pro wrestling. You want to do my show? Yes. And shout out to Nick Alexander.
I guess so. John will give credit to Larry Sharp and the Monster Factory for training him at the age of 15, but if you remember from our Candido episode, they both started learning much earlier from Chris Candido's grandfather, WWF wrestler Popeye Chuck Richards, with Balls taking some of his first pro wrestling bumps at the age of 12. In Chris and Ball's later teen years, Candido and John used to work matches under a mask since it was illegal for them to wrestle underage. They'd finish the match, change really quick, be back in their street clothes before the athletic commission could ask any questions. Eventually, Balls would start focusing on amateur wrestling, football, and college, leaving pro wrestling behind. He was actually a good enough wrestler to wrestle in college before he blew his knee out. From there, he tried to make it to the Olympics before getting banned from amateur wrestling forever. During the match, he had a guy in a reverse headlock, which is a legal move, but he broke the guy's back, technically winning. However, the ref DQ'd him, so John punched the ref in the face, getting banned forever because amateur wrestling doesn't understand heel turns.
Stupid.
Without fake-ass amateur wrestling to compete in, all roads led back to real wrestling. And Balls told a really cool story of when he came back from college to rejoin wrestling school. The trainer was like, here's how you bump. Here's how you lock up. So Balls eventually grabbed the dude in a headlock, caught a bunch of spots, hit the ropes, ran through the spots, and the trainer was like, oh, well, you want to be a teacher? Balls would eventually start legally wrestling around 92, first with his cousin in a tag team on small indie shows, and then after his cousin quit, he'd wrestle for Larry Sharp's World Wrestling Association as Abdullah Singh, which is a Middle Eastern character, heel gimmick, which I'm sure was handled completely respectfully.
He would do the big fireballs at the beginning of the matches, and as Balls would put it, the way that he got to learn how to do it is like, well, I already learned how to breathe fire in college, fucking around with grain alcohol and shit like everybody else. But then I discovered Thompson's water seal.
He said chugging, like having so much water seal in his mouth, rotted out most of his teeth.
Yeah, which New Jack calls bullshit on and just says meth.
Yeah, I learned that trick in college too with grain alcohol. Because I'm as you can tell, I have very hairy arms. Mm-hmm. So what I would do in college is I would pour Everclear on my arm and then light my arm on fire and then put it in front of like a girl. I'm like, I'm on fire. But I would always make sure that I would turn the kitchen sink on in whatever like house party I was at and make sure I do it close to the sink so I could scare the girl, then immediately put my hand underneath the water. So like every Monday after a party, I would have singed arm hair walking around. And if a girl was like not paying attention to me or the group of people that I would do this to, it was usually like a girl because it was their screams always made me happy. Yeah. Which is creepy to say. But
especially when you said it was creepy to say.
It's just what was creepy to say. Acknowledging it as well. But like I said, because dudes are just like, hey, what's up? They would never sell it. But college... That's what I wanted to hear because I always wanted to get a reaction, heel or baby face, whatever. I just want a reaction.
You're like, oh, we're gonna date now.
And lighting my arm on fire was my cute way of flirting with women in college.
Did it ever actually work though?
No, never. As a matter of fact, putting out the fire almost didn't work one time, and I burned myself pretty good on the arm.
I mean, hey, you really tried. That's really going for it.
But to double back on him playing a Middle Eastern character named Singh, it just made me flash back to a show that I did in Oneida, Tennessee, where I wrestled a guy who was doing a Middle Eastern gimmick. I think he was also Singh or whatever. And, normally when you play that part, you'll put a turban on, you'll, put on like a robe of some sort. You have an Iraqi flag or whatever it is. You'll kind of dress the part. You'll get the curled boots. You'll have like an Iraqi flag on your singlet or you'll do something. You'll do something to put it over. The guy that was wrestling in Oneida, Tennessee, where he was doing a Middle Eastern gimmick, came out in the orange camo, like No Limit Soldier style. Had the fucking most pronounced farmer's tan that I've ever seen before in my entire life, more so than my own father, who is a farmer. And like he had like a black singlet top, but like didn't have an Iraqi flag or anything. He just announced him as such and such Muhammad. Wow. And came out to Arab money. And
is that Mystical?
Yeah, whatever that is. Make it Arab money. And he goes, this guy's from the Middle East. I'm like, no, that guy is from up the street, and he is a landscaper. Clearly, I can tell by this tan, but he had nothing. And he goes, screw the USA, Iraq forever. And like, it'd just be like, if I walked down the street and did it. So I'd like to think that Balls made a genuine effort to actually do this better than this guy in Tennessee.
Well, he put himself over when he started doing job work for WWF, that everyone was blown away that he actually spoke English. So I was like, hey man, I was fucking committed. I was method acting that shit.
Which is a good tie-in. Larry Sharp hooked Balls up with some enhancement talent spots for WWF under his real name. And you can see John Reichner hold his own against people like Papa Shango, Marty Jannetty, Virgil, and Men on a Mission.
Speaking of Arab money, what about meat sauce money?
Yeah,
Fuck
meat
money,
sauce
so-
mafia. Blah, blah. Balls also worked in Puerto Rico, first for Hugo's All-Star Wrestling, which he loved. They took care of him. They paid him well. Then for Carlos Colon's World Wrestling Council, which is literally the opposite. Balls even had a story about the piece of shit that murdered Bruiser Brody, Jose Gonzalez, implying Balls would get hurt if he didn't start selling a little better. They were also dicking him around so badly on his money that Balls lost like 20 pounds when he was in Puerto Rico because he couldn't afford food.
Boiled chicken and peanut butter and banana sandwiches every night.
That led to Balls and Abdullah the Butcher getting minor payback on Jose. Balls said that he and Abdullah were wrestling a tag match against Jose and Carlos Colon when Butcher signaled Balls to cut off Carlos Colon. Abdullah grabbed Jose, says, "This is for Brody," and then decked the fuck out of him. And then the two left the country before also ending up in the shower. In 1994, John began working for Smoky Mountain Wrestling, joining best friend Chris Candido in the promotion after Chris actually gave Jim Cornette a tape of Balls Wrestling. There, he'd be Boo Bradley Jr., a playoff Boo Radley from To Kill a Mockingbird, and since the character was based off of a character in an insane asylum, Boo was mentally handy capable. Is that the term?
Or as Balls described it, a likable but nutty badass retard from the streets of New Jersey.
Also, too, maybe you can answer this question for me, Micah.
Yes.
Smoky Mountain, Jim Cornette's promotion.
Yeah.
And he was probably the one that suggested he should be Boo Bradley, making a reference to the movie To Kill a Mockingbird.
Yeah.
When was To Kill a Mockingbird made?
55, 56.
Okay, so a movie in the 50s that we are referencing in 1992. So Jim Cornette's reference, we're still old, even in his prime. I saw Jim Cornette cut a promo in a late 90s indie show and make a Dick Van Dyke Show reference. And it just makes me think, what was the year? You know, and don't get me wrong, I'm not to shit on Jim, but there is clearly a year in Jim Cornette's mind where, like, all right, everything from right here and on is shit. Music, television, everything. I don't need to learn anything else. I don't need to watch any more movies. This moment right here is where I will decide that culture, life, and this world. And it's like that guy that proclaimed in the year 1901 that all the inventions in the world have already been invented. That everything of worthwhile is here, and I wonder if it is somewhere in 1990 or somewhere in 1991 or wherever it was. Like I have a theory that maybe Jim Cornette saw Suburban Commando and said, "All right, movies are no longer worth seeing anymore."
There's always a stressor. There's something in someone's life, first big breakup, something like that. I feel like
Something.
a girl broke Jim Cornette's heart. and he was done.
There's something in his life, and somebody hurt you, Jim, and I want nothing but the best for you, and I want you to live the best life possible, and realize the joys of the world that exists before you and in front of you, sir.
Cut to the video of him yelling at the woman at the Wendy's. You fucking cunt, you don't think we ordered it? We don't want it.
Or cut to the beginning of this podcast.
If you've ever seen me do stand-up, I just do jokes about the 90s, and that's it. Y'all seen Bebe's Kids? Like, that's it. That's all I got.
I mean, I'm not saying that he's wrong, because I do the same thing. I just did a bit about the movie Star Trek V.
It's 80s, it's solid.
But also to talk more about Balls Mahoney, who is the topic of discussion, not Jim Cornette. In Smoky Mountain is where he got to wrestle George South, who is who is our oracle, as you say. I say he's our deep throat. But basically what I do when I do research for these podcasts is I go to George, I go, I have a question. I go, what are your thoughts on so-and-so? And his first reaction is always where I like to lead with. So when I go to George, I go, what are your thoughts on Balls Mahoney? I got, I love him. And George was telling me, which is something that's very true with all wrestlers, is that whatever the gimmick name of that person, when you met them and you call them by, like I still call Cesaro Claudio. He's Claudio.
Yeah.
Because that's how
Totally.
I met him, knew him. Hero is always Hero. He's not Ono. He's not.
Damn straight.
And Kevin Owens is Steen to me. Will always be Steen to me.
Bryan Danielson.
Yeah. However you were introduced to me, and I know you.
Sterling Golden.
Yes.
Who was that again?
It's Hulk Hogan.
Oh yeah, shit.
Yeah. So whoever you are, introduce me, and that's who you are forever. So forever. In George's interactions with Balls Mahoney, he was Boo Bradley.
Boo.
He's like, oh, it's Boo Bradley. Hey, Boo Bradley. Like, he would just, that's how he interacted with him. And apparently, Balls fucking hated it.
Oh, no.
Fucking hated being called Boo Bradley. Even years when George was like, hey, Boo Bradley. Like he'd be excited to see George, and George would be like, hey, Boo Bradley. And he'd be like,
he would always say both names. He would just go, hey, Boo.
No, Boo Bradley. He'd say the whole thing. But George talks very highly of him in this time. And George is like, oh, I used to wrestle him all the time. And George tells us one story of the finish that they would always do with Boo Bradley when they'd be going around wrestling on Smoky Mountain shows, where Boo had this teddy bear. And Boo would body slam George, then take this teddy bear and put it on George's chest. And then he would climb to the top rope and go for a splash. And of course, George was like, oh, when he body slammed, he'd take his time climbing to the top. And like the bear would be on my chest. And like, he's like 300 pounds. And he's going to top rope and he's going to murder me. And I'm just sitting there and I'm talking to the bear. I'm telling the bear, like, Bear, I don't want to do this. Bear, I'm afraid I'm going to hurt. Bear, I want to move, but I can't move. Oh Bear, I'm really scared right now, Bear. Oh, Bear, he's jumping off the top rope. And then George said when he came off the top and went for the splash, felt nothing. He didn't even hurt the bear. The bear was fine. I was fine too. Like, so he talked very highly of Balls Mahoney and his work and his ability to protect and take care of guys, which I'm sure Steve Ucrino later in this podcast will say something very different about him in ECW.
If you can remember who Balls Mahoney is.
Yes.
In Smoky Mountain, Boo would come out to Magic Carpet Ride by Steppenwolf. And
proving my point further.
I feel like it came out to
in Ohio Valley, he was using Frankenstein by Edgar Winter. And this was like in 2003. Jim Cornette was still using songs from the 70s in the mid 2000s.
He just quit. He just quit after a while.
He just stopped, and it's okay. I feel the same way too, and I have the same issues. But there's a point where it's like, you know what? You have to reach out to the kids and ask them, what are you interested in? And so I can then, as an entertainer and a performer that puts something out there, connect with you. Because those people that were around in this area that grew up with you, the people that you connected with, they will eventually die like everybody else. And then you have this new crop of people that you now have to evolve and entertain as well. Be a David Bowie. Like, don't get me wrong. Like, Cornette loves guys like AC/DC, guys that do the same, power chords of metal and over and over and over again. But I would rather look at somebody like a David Bowie, or a Prince or somebody who has evolved over time and revamped the character and connected with different generations of people.
Boo would form a stable with his pal Chris Candido, as well as, is someone playing a maraca, or is that Tammy Sitch's belly full of pills? Boo Bradley.
I was thinking, sitting here thinking, like, man, I hope I'm not too hard on Cornette. Like there are things about him that I like. I don't agree with his opinions, but I do enjoy being around him and interacting with him. And he was nice to people who I cared about very deeply for a very long time. And he's been a good person to me every time I see him. And I'm like, man, am I being too unfair? And then all of a sudden, you fucking drop that in.
Hey, you covered Jake easily. You covered
It's
so
like,
well.
all right, so at least you get the Nick Alexander Tammy Sitch treatment. So you got off easy, Jim. You got off easy.
So Boo Bradley won the TV title from Lance Storm in September of '94 after decking Lance with a fistful of chains when the ref was distracted by Sonny. And Boo eventually got over as a sympathetic face, making Chris and Tammy turn heel on Boo, killing the poor man's cat, Boots.
Poor Boots. I finally got to watch this. He's supposed to beat Cactus Jack because that's the whole thing. They lose the match. They do the old bait and switch where they have a real cat and then Tammy puts it in the bag and they chase him off and then they run back and there's the bag, but obviously the cat's gone. And then it's not so much a leg drop that Chris hits, but a butt smash from the top rope on this poor fucking cat. And as Cornette said, is like that place went quiet as hell. It was like the Garden when Ivan Koloff beat Bruno Sammartino. It's pretty amazing. Boo, he gets sad. He consoles it. Mark Curtis, WCW ref, he throws him out of the ring, and then a fucking red Power Ranger comes into the ring. Boo throws him out. He consoles him more, and immediately we cut to a promo of Chris Candido getting all pissed off. He's like, stupid cat, blah, 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 blah. And then we cut to a wooden cross that was clearly handmade that says R.I.P. Boots, and we begin a Cactus Jack promo talking to poor Boo as he sits there, and Cactus is like, all the good that was in that cat, you're gonna pass it on and it's gonna be great, and all the evil that was in Candido, you're gonna make them pay. And Cactus is in full mode, and it's one of the most amazing. There's a WrestleCrap article on it if you can't get the video. It's so stupid. It's great. In
that recap, didn't you forget the part where somebody flipped somebody with their dick? Like, I think you forgot that part in there because that would have all tracked. If you're like, oh, and then Joey Ryan came in and flipped somebody with his dick.
Okay. Right.
So from there, Boo would kind of stay in the TV title picture and feud with D'Lo Brown, but by the end of 1995, Smoky Mountain Wrestling was closing its doors, so Boo Bradley was out of a job. Without a regular paying gig, Balls worked at a gas station until he got a call from Bruce Pritchard and WWF, which had to be exciting and life-changing and thrilling. All Balls ever wanted to do was work for WWF, but then they gave him his gimmick. And at In Your House 5, Season Beatings, December 17th, 1995, Balls would debut as Santa Claus, spelled with an X because it was the 90s. These aren't your old man's consonants, you swear.
Mm-hmm. and looking at it almost looks like Xanax.
Yeah,
it does.
Which would have led him to end up in Sonny's belly, which most people did in 1995.
Jake is so proud of himself.
Jake just dropped all three of our mics. It is pandemonium here in the Manning Cave. So at Season's Beatings, $1 Million Man walks down to the ring while Savio Vega and Santa Claus are handing out gifts to the crowd. DiBiase eventually heckles Savio into the ring. While Savio is bickering with Ted, Santa Claus attacked Savio Vega from behind because everyone's got a price, even old Saint Nick. As silly as this is, Santa Claus, they were like really trying to get him over. Like, he had a match on December 23rd's Superstars, led to the ring by Ted DiBiase, and squash match Scott Taylor. Santa Claus once beat up Scotty 2 Hotty. And like, Ted was cutting promos on him on episodes of Raw. He had vignettes. They were really going to roll with this, but apparently this gimmick got thousands of phone calls and letters from angry parents because they were really put in a pickle. Do I tell my kids that Santa or pro wrestling is fake?
You know what? WWF has always had a sordid history with Santa Claus.
They have.
They had that issue on Primetime Wrestling where Roddy Piper beat the shit out of Santa Claus when it was really Bobby Heenan dressed as Santa Claus, but they didn't make it clear that Bobby Heenan was underneath.
Yeah.
And then, of course, Austin stuns Santa Claus. Like, there should be like a 30 for 30 on the aspects of Santa Claus. I remember doing a indie show in North Carolina in December, and we had Santa Claus come out, and we had Santa Claus get the shit beat out of him, thinking that his babyface was going to come out and make the save. Well, Santa Claus got beat up, but the babyface didn't know what his cue was, so they put like a whole match worth of heat on Santa Claus when really should have just been a bump. Babyface hits the ring. No. It was like straight up, I'm just beating the shit out of fucking Santa Claus.
He's gonna die.
Kids are crying in the crowd.
Yeah, it got real fast.
Fuck the baby face, bring the paramedics.
So if you're like worried about like, oh, is pro wrestling fake or is Santa fake? No, everybody believed both in that moment because of that angle.
So, a few days after Christmas, Xanta gets a call from J.J. Dillon, who explains that the gimmick isn't going to work. They offered Balls a developmental deal, which kind of would have kept him in wrestling purgatory from anywhere from 3 months to a year. Since he didn't want to do that, and mostly because leaving meant Balls would get paid right away from In Your House, they decided to settle on his contract, and that was that. He spent the better part of 96 hopping around the indies until 1997 when he found home sweet home in Extreme Championship Wrestling.
Like eventually, like when people think of Balls in ECW, is the jean shorts and the singlet, and then of course he had like a T-shirt or something. Like usually like
short hair too.
Yeah, usually like a Marilyn Manson. But like during this time when he first came in, he had like this weird biker outfit.
As it was described to him, he was going to be a sadomasochistic gay biker. That was the original gimmick that Raven gave him.
They never. Okay, I was going to say like I never got the backstory on what that was, and I just
that was it.
Okay, so like I don't think they did promos on it being that way. He just came out like that, and it was just really weird because he had a little biker hat on.
Because Balls didn't really do many promos at all, so they didn't really build it up, and he had no like gay themed moves to start with.
But he had some badass matches with Sandman when he first came in.
Oh god, the way that he would destroy Sandman's brain with those chairs, and they would have like a winner gets a beer match, and then they would just end it in no contest.
And also too, it's funny, like this era of Balls where we're at right now. If you take a picture of Balls in this era and put it next to a picture of Zane Riley,
dude, I have that in my notes.
It is fucking scary. Yep. So much in fact that I believe it might have been like 5 years ago, maybe 6 years ago, at one of the first WrestleCades in Winston-Salem. Zane Riley was with us and behind our merch table. We were just kind of hanging out. Of course, I had all these stars come in for WrestleCade. And Zane was just sitting behind our table chilling, and somebody came up to Zane and was like, "Hey man, I just want to tell you, you're looking really good recently. Like you're doing a real good job, and it's nice to see you finally, take your health and in your hands and really improve upon yourself." And Zane's like, "Oh, thanks, man. I know I've been losing a little bit of weight." And
that meant so much to him.
He starts glowing.
Because like when Zane met, he was kind of out of shape, and then he got with me and Zane and Caleb, and we're like, "No, man, you got to be in shape to do this." And he was really trimming down and working hard in the ring. And then the guy like said that nice compliment, and then kind of stopped, and then had this weird look, and then Zane kind of felt something like, "You thought it was somebody," and Zane goes, "Who do you think I am?" And the guy goes, "Are you Balls Mahoney?" And he goes, "No, I'm not Balls Mahoney." And keep in mind, this is the era of Balls where Balls doesn't even look like that anymore.
Yeah, he looks rough.
But now as we're going through this and thinking about Balls and Candido, it's very funny that we have, Zane, who looks like Balls Mahoney, and one of his closest friends is old pretty boy Caleb Connolly.
Pulling off the Candido.
So I'm just saying, we've got our own version of Candido and Balls alive and well today.
So does that make you Tammy?
I have to be, because I have so many pills on my stomach right now. I take an absurd amount of supplements.
Whoa, that explains how fucking much you love Shawn Michaels.
Yeah!
So eventually Balls would form a tag team with Axel Rotten, known as the Hardcore Chair Swinging Freaks. To me, it sounds like an old circus act, like pay $1 to see the freaks, pay $0.25 to sit in the chair.
We put some chains on a chair and we'll just slug them around without any care to the people involved.
For $20, we'll give you CTE and you'll never forget this incident again.
And then you'll pay us again because we tell you that you didn't pay.
So Balls and Axel feuded with the Dudleys, FBI, and even triple threat with his best pal, now in ECW as well, Chris, no motherfucking gimmicks needed, Candido. At 97's November to Remember, the Chair Swinging Freaks would get a title shot in a 4-way Dance to the Death match with FBI, the Dudleys, and the Gangstanators.
Yeah, that was the first ECW pay-per-view I ever ordered. I remember the anticipation on that, like Jake has talked about in the past, of that when you would see that pay-per-view free window and they would hype the shit out of everything, and just the little clips that they would show of what ECW was and what they did, and you were going to get to order a pay-per-view. I remember being so fucking stoked. I think the first introduction was Balls blasting the shit out of Bubba in the back and then caving in Tracy Smothers' skull, and it was like, what?
Balls and Axel would be the final team left with the FBI, but they lose when a ref gets knocked out and a new ref runs in for the 3 count, only to see his fallen comrade in the corner. So he runs over to check on him, which makes Balls get in his face. So the ref kicks Balls in the nuts.
Man.
Balls gets rolled up and they lose the match.
Fucking Jeff Jones.
Mahoney and Rotten got another shot at the titles at WrestlePalooza against Chris Candido and Lance Storm. And it's one of my favorite angles because Chris Candido and Lance Storm were tag team partners, but they hated each other. It's so good.
Well, and also, too, what was great about that feud, and I think I mentioned on the Candido episode, is they would defend the titles. They would win the tag team title match. They would have a fight on the microphone after that, and then they would engage in a singles match. So Paul Lee loved it because he's like, oh, these guys are going to wrestle a tag match and then turn around wrestle a singles match.
Fill that card up.
So that's one less match I have to book.
And to carry the whole thing forward, as most tag teams would come out, they usually come out together with the music that works together. Lance Storm would come out to his music, and then Candido would come out to his music.
He'd restart it.
Yeah, he restarts like, no, I'm coming back. Was it Back in Black?
Yeah. What it was Thunderstruck was Lance Storm, and Chris would walk out with them all dejected, and then he would get in the truck and like, right, go play my music. He would go to the back, they'd play Back in Black, and then Chris Candido would do this exaggerated strut, dance into the ring, over the top intro.
Stealing the thunder.
So this match ends when Lance springboard drop kicks Balls while he's holding a chair, so that whacks him in the face. Lance covers Balls, who gets hit in the back with a chair from his teammate Chris Candido, who then covers Balls for the win. It's awesome. And WWE straight jacked this angle with Crash and Hardcore Holly. Just straight stole it.
Yeah, well, don't worry. They've erased all existence of chair shots now in the network. So Balls' entire career is basically him walking to the ring, balls, 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 jab, 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 finish.
Oh, Balls is laying in the ring. What happened? Yeah. And it's not bad enough that the WWE network is pumped in all this shitty fucking music because we don't get Enter Sandman or Natural Born Killers. I didn't realize how much the atmosphere of that music created, and playing these shitty just fill-in songs, just like, people don't understand, man. This shit was fucking amazing
because it was of the time. It was music that like spoke to what was going on. Like, ECW is not even a third as good without the copyrighted music in it.
After failing to win the tag team titles with Axel Rotten, Mahoney found a new partner in Masato Tanaka.
Before they became tag team partners, they had a hell of a fucking match. It might have been one of Balls' best matches leading up to it at the ECW arena. This was when Masato, I think he had one match before this, but this is when Masato really got pulled put over and Balls helped. ECW Arena, they're beating the shit out of each other, and it's that spot where Balls is known for his chair shots. He prided himself on his chair shots. He said he knocked out Sandman, he knocked out Big Dick Dudley. He gets Tanaka, and he drills the fuck out of him with the chair. And the crowd's just like, ooh. And Masato's just kind of sitting there, and then he starts to shake, and then he lets out that guttural yell and goes, ah! And the crowd, just the way they pop, and you can feel the goosebumps on everybody in Philly going like, holy shit, no one has ever no-sold a fucking Balls Mahoney chair shot. And then Balls pulls back and drills the shit out of him again. He drops him this time, but then Masato, he knows how to milk it. He slowly gets up shaking, and the crowd is like, even for the ECW audience at this time, of all the shit they have seen, the goosebumps that I know were there and that I felt rewatching this, they were like, I have never seen this spot. I have never seen someone going at Balls in these chair shots like it. And then Balls hits him again and drills the shit out of him. And then Masato comes back and destroys Balls with 3 chair shots. And then he hits him with a tornado DDT onto 2 steel chairs, and it's over. One all-time great ECW moments is just Masato no-selling those first Balls chair shots, because he would do that type of spot with Mike Awesome later. But the first time, that crowd had no clue what the fuck hit it.
Well, it was much needed because actually Tanaka's debut with ECW did not go well.
Johnny Smith or something?
No, Doug Furnace.
Yeah, okay.
It was on a pay-per-view. I think it was Living Dangerously, if I'm not mistaken. It did not go well at all. It clearly a language barrier. There were some issues. Like, it was almost like they were trying to call it in the ring, and then you have a language barrier. And it seems like it was like a match that was kind of thrown together too, like last minute. Yeah. It did not come off well, and not a good representation of a guy who would eventually become their world champion. Yeah. So call Balls Mahoney in to save the day.
And just have no care for someone and try to murder them.
Yes, exactly. And the other guy being just tough as shit and saying, not today, not today.
Balls talked about that a lot. Just his chair shots were his pride and joy. On the receiving end, he said he never got KO'd either. And there's a moment in one of his shoots where he's like, he's patting his head and he's like, it doesn't hurt. It hurts, but it doesn't hurt. He said, I just don't feel nothing. Like on the top of his head, I just don't feel anything. And you're like, oh, man, dude, shit.
Which does not age well.
No.
Just to let you know, just to paint a picture of the culture at this time. Like there's a lot of things in my wrestling career, I'm caught between cultures. I was in an era where like the tail end of guys asking for pillows in the locker room, and you're just one of the boys. I think Jimmy Jacobs said it best, was like how he'd romanticize about being fucked up and wrestling drunk, and we have the show, we make our money, and we go get fucked up afterwards. Just that whole idea of that's what being a pro wrestler was, where now it's much more defined now, and guys got good bodies. It's more about getting to bed early or playing video games afterwards. Having a pizza, that's like a big
day.
Yeah, exactly. They're talking about cheat days and stuff like that, where also too, in my pro wrestling life, you were considered a fucking pussy if you put your hands up for a chair shot.
Yeah, right,
you were required to put your hands down and make a whole deliberate thing. Like even just kind of like flinching them up. It was almost like the flinch game,
right,
but with people swinging steel chairs as hard as they possibly could across people's head, at the crown of their fucking head.
Yeah.
And no idea of protection or how to take care of guys. And that's what you were told to do. And if I kind of raised my hands up a little bit, and even though I didn't even get them up at all, oh, you moved your fucking hands, you fucking pussy. And that's what you were fucking told to do. And not only too, the people that were calling you pussies weren't just the guys in the back, but also wrestling fans.
Oh, yeah.
Wrestling fans.
Especially ECW Philly.
Mm-hmm. And then there was a shift that I remember. This match with Steve Corino and Kevin Steen, and the boys in the back were mad that Corino never got his hands up. And then even the fans were saying this is fucking violence at its best. It's just gross and disgusting. They didn't put their hands up. Who the fuck are they? This is shitbag fucking wrestling. Well, wait a minute, you would have called us shitbags for putting our hands up a few years ago. It was just this weird dynamic, and Balls made a name for himself because of these fucking chair shots. And in this culture right now, someone like Balls Mahoney would be vilified, but at the same time, he'd be vilified, his gifts and his online videos would shoot up right away, and he would develop a reputation that he can then make money off of in the future. So the people all this debate, like, oh, should he be swinging his chair so hard? He should be protecting people. That's where this business is. Well, at this time in the business, like, that's how you got over. Do you get over at somebody's expense, or do you have the reputation that you work well with people? And Balls could do it both ways. And at this moment in time, he just capitalized on what got you over, which is swinging that fucking chair as hard as you possibly could at the expense of Steve Corino, who, like, that chair shot on him. Oh, I mean, when you were mentioning the swinging the chair shots at Tanaka, it made me think about the chair shot on Corino, and I started to get this feeling, this burning feeling, like right above my heart and my esophagus. It's like it was affecting me personally, thinking about it, like how that would feel physically.
The visual of the chair when he holds it up, and it looks like, a log slammed into it.
Yeah,
it's the same. Like, I got to see at the Grady Cole Center, I think it was second row, Rob Van Dam versus Balls. And I went back and watched it because I still have my VHS fan cam video, and I watched it this morning. At the time, and it still holds up, Balls hit Rob with the loudest, scariest fucking chair shot. Like, I really, honest to God, thought Rob was dead. Not just, like, saying that to be like, oh, man, I thought he was fucking dead. But, like, he creamed him so hard, and you knew he hit him with the sweet spot of the chair, and it was at the end of his full extension and power, and Rob dropped so fucking hard. Watching the video, it wasn't as impactful. I can't compare live, I mean, like they always say. But, I mean, it was still, I remembered it, and it did not let me down because I knew it was worrisome. I mean, back then,
well, think about
you
it. 'Cause
freak
people,
out, but I mean, ugh,
if you get drunk at a bar and you get dropped, and you hit your head on the concrete, you die.
Yeah.
Here's this person, like, legit taking a foreign object that is made out of steel and swinging it from over the top of their shoulder on down, and using gravity on top of all of their force, and even using their back and their legs to swing it down upon you. And then you get up and finish the rest of the match and then do it again the next night. And you brought up Balls Mahoney and Rob Van Dam. They were the fucking go-to as main events for a lot of ECW house shows, and including a pay-per-view, I believe Anarchy Rules in Chicago, which they superseded a three-way match with Tanaka and Mike Awesome and Taz even as well. Like, that pay-per-view main event was a big deal because those matches were so good. And the fact that Rob was able to survive every night doing that.
Take nasty fucking chair shots more than anyone. It's like some of those DDTs he would take from Jerry Lynn. As Rob had another thing for taking those chair shots. Oh God, that will always be the nastiest fucking chair shot I ever saw. Balls killing Rob Van Dam at the Grady Cole Center in 1999.
But the thing is, though, they did it at Grady Cole. I guarantee they did it in Villa Park.
Oh, yeah.
They did it in Kansas City somewhere. They did it in Minneapolis, Minnesota. They did it in Edison, New Jersey. They did it in Jacksonville, Florida. They did it in Richmond, Virginia. They did it in Nashville, Tennessee. They did it in Columbus, Ohio. And they would do that every night.
At November to Remember 1998, Masato and Balls took on the Dudleys for the Tag Team Championships. After a crazy match, RVD and Sabu run in to attack the Dudleys, putting them through tables, and Tanaka and Balls would double cover them to win the ECW Tag Team Championship.
I mean, God, how over was Rob? Like, he wasn't even in the match, but he basically won the tag titles with Sabu. I felt like, Balls got his first tag title win, and I was like, they didn't even, like, kick him once after they put him through the table so they could say they won.
But, 6 days later, they dropped the belts back to the Dudleys. Womp, womp, womp. Shortly after, Mahoney formed a tag team with Spike Dudley. And they'd feud with the Dudleys, trading the tag team titles back and forth, winning the titles first at ECW Heatwave 99, losing them for the final time on an edition of ECW on TNN.
Fuck yeah. They won him, then they won him back, then they won him back again, and then they like it was an extra step because the whole thing at the time was Joey Styles was selling, if the Dudleys take the belts, then they're gonna show up to Connecticut and throw them on the steps, and it just kept going back and forth. They did it I think there was like 2 back and forths.
Yeah, and what a formula with Spike Dudley, because Spike is the runt of the litter, and they always beat the shit out of Spike Dudley, so you could have any babyface come in, team with Spike, Spike's going to take the pin. The feud continues. You have another babyface come in, take a big pop. But if that clicks, they take the belts from him. And then at the end of the day, they still beat Spike. So that babyface just came in. He gets a little bit of a rub for being a tag team champion. But he doesn't lose anything because the angle's still with Spike. And you could pull away from that, come to that whenever you need to. I think it was mentioned before we recorded, there's a lot of cycles in ECW booking. And that was always like a cycle that they could go to if they wanted to get to, we need to have a feud with the Dudleys, but we want to make sure the Dudleys have the belts when we go on TV. So let's like have him feud with Spike, and to mix it up, we'll have him partner with somebody different, but we need the belts back on the Dudleys for this moment in time, so we can just have them lose it and drop it, and this other babyface doesn't lose anything, but it's an interesting pairing. So
this was also the time when we started getting into Fire, and I think it's the first title change in the Spike and Balls Dudley feud. They do the thumbtacks on the table, light that motherfucker on fire, and Bubba power bombs him through the table, flames and all. It was all over the highlight reels forever. And I thought that was a one-time thing, but pretty much every single tag team title match after that, they would do it. Spike took a flaming table from the inside the ring to the outside, but Balls was always the one, and he would just sell the shit out of it. The standing ovation after the first one was pretty special, but, you know, Balls clearly loves pain.
Well, also, too, I think Balls said that there's a trick to it, or it was Bubba, that when the power bomb happens, it's actually when you power bomb down, like it pushes the air off the side. So when you come down and slam on down to the table, the fire is already out.
Physics, man.
Because of the wind of a guy, because you really got to make sure you slam him down, so it almost kind of like there's a whoosh, and it'll put out the fire. But there usually is a little bit of fire, depending on how they soak the table. But if you just soak it just enough, much like my arm back in college, that just a quick waft of it will put it out right away. But if you really soak that wooden table, then it's still on fire when you hit it. And then you got to immediately, once you hit, start rolling to put yourself out.
You're speaking of kind of how it works with the physics and the inside secrets of the trade. And I think Mahoney, they got the name because Jocko Mahoney was kind of a, I wouldn't say famous, but well-known stuntman from Hollywood back in the day. So Ball's just living up to his stuntman ways.
Absolutely. Oh, but also, too, like, not only was he kind of like, you know, doing a lot of hardcore stuff, he could still go.
He really could.
And you saw it during the Rob Van Dam stuff, but also, too, like, Balls took a lot of pride in his work and getting guys over. And much like he did with Tanaka, but also, too, like, you could probably make the argument that Balls helped solidify Rob as a certifiable main event guy.
Totally.
In ECW. They repeated that main event a lot on the house shows. If they needed a house show main event, put Balls and Rob Van Dam, and that's going to be for sure a main event. And Balls took a lot of pride in getting guys over. Well, I remember Tommy Dreamer telling me this story. Tommy has a list of like top 5, top 3 what the fuck moments. And one of those happens to be when Matt Taven did a moonsault on George the Animal Steel. And that's how he got into like listing all his other what the fuck moments. And Balls is on his what the fuck moment list. And towards the end, in the later years of ECW, like in the 2000s, or just the year 2000, Tommy was at a lot of the house shows putting them together, and they pretty much kind of had a formula to them. So, you know, Tommy kind of laid stuff out. Well, they were in Kansas City somewhere in Kansas, and there was a local guy or a guy that was trying to break into ECW, because a lot of times what ECW would do with their tryouts is they'd have an open tryouts for local wrestlers. You'd show up and basically like Tracy Smothers would run a few drills with them. The Dudleys would beat the shit out of you, or like Kid Cash would beat you up a little bit, or they'd have guys and just kind of like rough up some of the locals. And if you like went through it, they're like, all right, well, we'll put you on the show tonight. Well, I guess there's this one guy around the Kansas area that everybody seemed to like and help out, but he wasn't that great of a wrestler. But Balls felt like nah, man, I can get this guy over. Let me wrestle him. And so Tommy's like, all right, I'll let you wrestle him, but, you know, let's keep it about like 6 to 8 minutes, no more than 10. Just simple little opening match. And Balls goes 30 fucking minutes and brawls all over the building, get juice, does all kinds of fucking shit, and like take all kinds of crazy bump for this guy who's not contracted on a fucking house show in Kansas somewhere. And fucking Tommy is livid. Fucking livid. Balls comes back. He's fucking bleeding, busted up.
Fuck
he's
what
got
a match.
Yeah, he's got pieces all over. See that fucking match? See, he could fucking go. And Tommy's just like, what the fuck are you doing? What the fuck is wrong with you? And then Tommy's like main point, he goes, I appreciate your love for the business and you want to get this guy over and you want to display him and you want to help him get a job. But balls, you're on TV. You're making money. You don't want to get yourself hurt doing these fucking house shows when we need you for the TVs and pay-per-views. And balls, listening to all this from Tommy, this clearly making sense over and over again, Balls just looks right at him and then takes a bump on the floor. and says, I can't be hurt. And then walks off. Yeah. And Tommy's just like, what the fuck was that? I don't know.
Why did I try? Why the fuck did I try?
Yeah, why? Why do I talk sense? Why?
Balls like patted his head. Can't feel nothing.
Yeah.
Can't feel nothing. So. Real quick, it was interesting. Balls was talking about the early signs of when he knew ECW was failing. And kind of like what you said, he knew he would get paid, but they wouldn't fly him out to ECW house shows, and they would just bring in local wrestlers to fill in so it wouldn't be as much money. I figured that's kind of a common...
Also, too, like Karina would tell me, the key was if you wanted to get the same bank where Paul Lee made the checks, the payroll through, like if it was like Wells Fargo or whatever bank, or Wachovia or whatever it would have been at the time, like whatever bank that Paulie used, you made sure that you opened up a bank account at that bank, and then when you got the check, you immediately get there because people are going to start cashing. Yeah. And the thing is, if it's the same bank, that the transfer out of that account will happen faster, because if, like, let's say Paul's payroll is through Bank of America and you're Wells Fargo, the Wells Fargo transfer will take longer, but it's much like my paycheck. Like my paycheck can go into my account immediately, where if I had Bank of America and my boss does Wells Fargo payroll, it'll take a little bit longer. Yeah. So like that's what everybody did. They made sure they had the same account and immediately go there and make sure to take it out immediately, so it got out of there directly.
So some indie shows in wrestling are first come, first serve, but with Paulie, it was first come, first paid.
Yeah. And what's even more ironic when we talk about checks in ECW, the only bounce check that I've ever received in professional wrestling came from an ECW wrestler.
Can you?
I'm not gonna say. I will never say. I don't care if it comes up in a Patreon Q&A. I will never fucking mention that name ever.
It's so obvious it's Senpu, right?
Taz, give Jake Manning.
God damn it, Simon Diamond, you piece of shit.
Also, too, during this time, this will probably dovetail a little later, like ECW guys could take indie bookings.
No.
And Ian Rotten ran his own promotion, IW Mid-South, and he ran like a King of the Deathmatch tournament, I believe in 1997. If I'm not mistaken, old Balls Mahoney was on it. It just goes back to, like I was saying before, Balls had respect for Ian, wanted Ian's promotion to kind of get off the ground, because Ian's like IW Mid-South just kind of got started, knew this would be kind of a big event, and wanted to help out Ian. Like, just goes to show that Balls is willing to lend his body to help somebody out and get their promotion off the ground, even though it was violent and it would take a chunk of his life and a piece of his body. Literally, but he would do it for another wrestler, and he would do it in the prime of his career, which was 1997, 1998, whatever that period is. But I believe it was right in those years. This speaks to Balls Mahoney.
Mahoney's final ECW appearance would be at 2001's Guilty as Charged, where Balls and Chili Willy faced Simon Diamond and Johnny Swinger, ending in a no contest because Rhino ran in and gored everyone.
And in the good old ECW days, this show you why the shit went to hell. They had a no contest in an ECW match.
Yeah.
Fuck this. And I don't even remember Chili Willy.
No, Chili Willy is a fucking amazing man.
Is he really?
Oh, yeah. I did a lot of extra talent with Chili Willy, and he did this like King gimmick in North Carolina, like I think about the time of Booker T was doing the King thing. But like Chili Willy, I was in a battle royal with him, and he gave me a working punch. That was the lightest working punch I've ever had before, but it looked like he murdered me. Chili Willy was such a goddamn fucking pro, and I'll never forget when I was doing extra talent with him. He was in there, and he was doing a tryout match in front of everybody, in front of like Jamie Noble and everybody there. Wow. And they didn't know who he was. Yeah. They had no fucking clue who Chili Willy was. And I think Chili Willy even was in developmental for a short period of time for WWE before he went over and served our country. And
we were putting him over fucking hard.
And he was, and I think it was about the time that they had just restarted the ECW thing. And Chili Willy is extra talent. and they're trying to figure out who they're going to have a match with on ECW. And here you have an ECW guy who's doing extra talent. You don't know who he is. He's been in developmental system. He has this match, and you're like, oh, this guy isn't bad. And then somebody goes, that's Chili Willy. And then Jamie knows, oh, I didn't realize you were Chili Willy. And I'm like, what the fuck, man? And also, too, he did that extra talent tryout match with a blown out knee. Damn. But he's like, fuck, man, I'm just trying to get a job. I'm trying to cover it up. And I remember him having a brace. He goes, hey, man, if we're in there, please take care of me. Get whatever you need, And also that time, too, he was a prison guard. Like a fucking badass prison guard. Like
I already want to watch the Chili Willy documentary.
He was telling me stories about, like, there was a riot that broke out and they had to lock down the room and they got it isolated down. Like, they got some other people out of there and then they had to lock down this one guy who was still causing a scene and throwing shit around. And, like, legally, he's like, we can't send you in there, because 17 of you guys jumping on this fucking one dude, that's not fucking good. Like, we just need to wait for him to calm down and let him like peter out a little bit. And the guy wasn't slowing down, and then fucking Chili Willy's like, fuck that. And he took his shit off. He goes, you let me the fuck in there, I will fuck him up personally with no goddamn weapons. Like, he's like, I ain't fucking waiting around for this goddamn motherfucker to get tired. I'll tire his ass out. Like, straight up badass, great fucking worker, awesome wrestler. You put a little goddamn respect on Chili Willy's name.
I'm glad I was ignorant to who Chili Willy was.
Once again, the dynamic of the show is Michael's like, who the fuck is this guy? And I go, oh, only the greatest man of all time.
Who is Scott Casey again? I don't fucking remember.
I will fucking disperse the goddamn name of Scott Casey.
After leaving ECW, Balls hopped around the indies, including USA Extreme Pro Wrestling, IWA Mid-South, and also Juggalo Championship Wrestling. Jake, what do you know about Juggalo Wrestling?
So much. In fact, I'll probably do a How Did This Get Booked episode on one of the shows that I was on for Juggalo Championship Wrestling. Really? Oh, I wrestled at the Gathering, my friend.
Wow.
I was at 2 gatherings. I only wrestled at one of them, because the shows get moved around so much, and I had to be back in Charlotte. I think it was like the midnight wrestling didn't happen till 5 a.m. So let you know how late the fucking show started.
So the crowd was just great.
Oh, yeah. They didn't give a fuck. But the ICP, big, huge wrestling fans. Yeah. And,
great on commentary. Holy fucking shit, he put him through the glass. Fuck, motherfucker.
But nice guys, and they take care of these guys. They pay them well. They're passionate about it. So Balls Mahoney's right up that fucking alley. And if you're like, hey, you want to wrestle this show at 3 a.m., Balls Mahoney's like, how much? And he'd be there.
After ECW, Balls was totally fucked up. Basically, alcoholic, drug-induced. But the thing that I found interesting, this was when to follow the Candido narrative. Candido was fucked up a lot of the time. This was hard pill time, and Balls was depressed as shit. And they came together. They finally saw how fucked up both of them were and knew they had to change their lives. And Balls said he'd help Chris clean up if Chris helped Balls get back in the gym and get in shape. And they made a pact, and they started lifting every night, and they really brought him out of their funk. Damn, Balls in a shoot interview making me really care and kind of tear up.
Yeah, that's good.
And also too to maybe put a little bow on their entire relationship. I think pretty well known that Balls Mahoney, Satanist,
humanist,
Hail Satan,
humanist.
Humanist.
He makes that very clear. Sorry, he's like, there's no Satan. There's no fucking Satan.
Well, I mean,
I know.
Well, that is what Satanism is.
I know. That's what I'm saying.
Yeah.
But Balls made it very clear. It's like, I don't fucking worship the devil. I'm just all about humanity. Sorry.
A lot of people like talk about that, but they refer to him being a Satanist. And when Chris died, his funeral being in a church. And Balls still showed up, and some people were like, you're not a real Satanist. And like, well, fuck off. Maybe he's fucking being there for his fucking friend and putting that all aside. But I remember, I think Tammy was saying, like, yeah, even Balls showed up to the funeral in the church. Like, that just shows how much love Chris had for people, is that here's the Satanist, like, yeah, I'll go to a church. So that was mostly to get to that joke, even though I know Satanism is more about aesthetics than it is anything else.
I was about to chime in again. Actually, but yeah, fuck.
In 2005, Balls was part of a UXW Memorial Battle Royal for his best friend, Chris Candido, who had passed away. I just can't imagine the emotions of that. The Battle Royal was actually won by our boy, Johnny Candido, who tweeted at us that one time.
Oh my God, that was probably the first time where I felt like, hey, we're doing something kind of cool.
And thank you for keeping your brother's legacy alive.
Amen.
Yeah, fucking A.
Also in 2005, there was an ECW One Night Stand reunion show. At this point, ECW was owned by WWE, who put on this one-off show for ECW fans. This show was attended by a bunch of WWE wrestlers led by JBL. As part of the main event between the Dudleys versus Dreamer and Sandman, the chair-swinging freaks ran out to fight pre-match with the Blue World Order and return later when Stone Cold Steve Austin invited the locker room out to the ring for a beer because Stone Cold, old ECW wrestler. Stone Cold challenged the Raw and SmackDown wrestlers watching from above to a fight. They all got into the ring with this big epic showdown. Taz walked in and all fucking hell broke loose. And ECW defended their turf. They beat up Eric Bischoff, of all people. The whole segment, if you've never seen it, check it out. Fantastic. Piggybacking on the success of the One Night Stand show, WWE did a full-blown ECW relaunch in 2006, and here is where ECW finally gets good.
Oh, it's a funny joke, but I'm mad.
But I'll never forget when it got announced, and I was just thinking about this not too long ago. Like, I remember it getting announced, and I was actually with Tracy Smothers all weekend long.
Fucking name dropper.
Well, I mean, it's vital because I was just thinking about him saying this, and it's probably one of the better pieces of knowledge I've ever gotten in wrestling, and it's very applicable to today's certain wrestling climate. In that, when they announced that it was, they're going to do ECW and they're having a whole new hour of television, I remember Tracy getting super excited. I was like, this is the best news I've heard, man. That means there's no more jobs. All the guys are going, there's going to be guys that are going to be coming up, and they got to fill those spots on TV. That means there'll be less guys on the indies, and I got to fill their spots. And then you'll fill my spot, and then everybody moves up. This is the best news. And it's like, even though he did make an indication like, oh, ECW's coming back and I'm going to get a job. He's like, somebody's going to get a job, and I'm going to move into their spot. And it's just kind of the way to think right now with all the announcements and the things that are happening with AEW. All these guys move up, they become exclusive, then all their spots become empty and they get filled by somebody else. There's a lot of talk like, oh, the indies are dead, there's not these superstars. Well, there'll be new superstars. Everybody's going to rise. It's just nobody's been made yet. And if we just find a way to make guys, we'll be fine.
One of the first announcements with the relaunch of WWE's ECW was the signing of Balls Mahoney, and his signing was announced with Axl Rotten, but when Rotten missed a ton of dates and appearances because he loved them drugs, he was let go. So Balls had to become a singles wrestler very quickly.
I remember being in an indie show where Ian Rotten was wrestling at, and we were just being stupid fans. I think not to name drop again.
No, I'm just being a dick, Jake.
I
love your name drops.
But it is a valid story. It's when I was with Seth Rollins, and it was for
fuck you. That's a big name drop.
Yeah, it was an RCW show in LaSalle, Illinois, and we'd help set up the ring.
And Seth Rollins helped set up the ring.
Yeah, and we tore it down. Although they wanted me to go back to the warehouse and unload it off the truck onto the warehouse. So basically, not only had to help set it up, I had to tear it down and then unload it from the truck. And I was like, nah, man, I'm not going to unload it from the truck. And I remember them calling me, where you at? We need you here to unload the truck. And I just fucking kept on driving. I'm dead right now. But Seth Rollins went there to unload the truck. Oh. He went the extra mile. And I'm pretty sure that's where he signed his WWE contract. They're like, whoever's unloading this truck gets signed to WWE. But anyways, we were there. Merrick Brave was there. Crotch from SCW. All the SCW guys. We were all there. And Ian was in the ring. And just to be just little shitbag fucking fans and being who we were and started a chant. We started chanting, we want Axl. We want Axl. And then Ian got the microphone. Because he enjoyed us. Obviously, he enjoyed Tyler Black and Merrick Brave more than me. And got on the microphone and goes, all you got to do is just get him some heroin. He'll be here.
Can we not talk about how Axel died based on that joke?
Well, at the time he was still alive and well.
I know, just you saying that, I was like, oh, actually,
Listen,
I reread that today in the CTE article and just like, oh, fuck.
Listen, nothing from this episode ages well. The CTE jokes, the heroin jokes, and all the Sunny jokes. So
Wrestling in general does not fucking age well.
Yeah, that's why Jim Cornette has stayed in the same era as possible, because that's where it's safe.
Well, also not to name drop, but I was in the green room of the Laughing Skull with Tom Segura, and he brought up that at 2006 One Night Stand,
Yeah?
Balls had a great match. I was really in the green room with Tom Segura. Balls had a match with his old tag partner, Masato Tanaka, and after denting a fucking chair on his head, he got the win.
It's like, if you go back and watch, I watched that match, Balls Talks, they should have got like 20 minutes, it would have been amazing. And it actually feels like time got cut. Because, yeah, every other single match they had was better than that.
I still enjoyed it, though.
I mean, it is,
solid.
but like, if you look at their other stuff,
Yeah.
which I don't want to call you a noob on ECW, but you admit it, so it's no big deal. But, I mean, seriously, like, that match, it's like, why book that if you're not going to fucking let them do what they can do? And it is short and concise of what they have done, but it was like, it's a big pay-per-view. Let them go all out.
I understand ECW. Every angle is like, hey, you're gay. And the other guy's like, I ain't gay. And he's like, you prove it. You hit that woman in her pussy with a chair. And then he does it. And
then the crowd is chanting, "You're a effing agate."
She's a crack whore.
Yeah.
From there, Balls would get into angles with people like Matt Stryker, Bobby Lashley, The Miz, and he'd even do an angle with Kelly Kelly. On February 29th, 2008, a Leap Day episode of SmackDown, Balls wrestled Big Daddy V. Remember him from the last episode, guys?
Oh, we're doing
It was
it
a
correct
good
order.
episode. It was a good
Okay, yeah,
episode.
I
Go back.
remember.
And check it out. It was good.
Recorded a week ago.
The match would end in a no contest after The Undertaker came to the ring to beat up Big Daddy V and chokeslam Balls Mahoney. Not long after that, Balls was released from his WWE contract April 28th, 2008. From there, Balls would make his rounds working for smaller promotions in the U.S. and around the world. He'd go back to World Wrestling Council. He'd work for the Juggalos again. He'd pop up in TNA, Ring of Honor. He'd even tag up with Jake Manning's old partner, Grizzly Redwood.
And
Shirt I proudly own, by the way. Jake and Grizzly Redwood.
And also, too, Balls had a decent hand in, I think, mentoring Matt Tremont a little bit. I remember, like, when they were doing the Extreme Rising or Extreme Reunion shows, I remember Matt Tremont kind of being around and Balls kind of be around him. And that's the impression I was getting, is that Matt Tremont was kind of around Balls Mahoney and kind of, like, mentoring him a little bit. And I would see Balls do that with a couple of people. I had a weird interaction with Balls Mahoney in probably 2005, 2006. I was at a wrestler reunion show in Valley Forge, Pennsylvania, and I was going to the bathroom, and then there's Balls Mahoney trying to lace up these boots, not like wrestling boots, but like boots, which were kind of his wrestling boots at the time, but like Doc Martin, like black boots that had duct tape all around them. And then also too, he had duct tape around his actual ankle. And
Fuck gauze.
yeah, like gauze, but he had duct tape. And I was just looking down at him and he's like, and he's like struggling to tie up his boots. And of course, when you see somebody like Balls Mahoney who has his ankle duct tape, I was like, "Are you okay?" To which he replied, he goes, "Yeah, I was in a cage match and I fell off the top of the cage and I fucked up my ankle real bad." I'm like, hate it when that happens. And walked onto the bathroom. And it's funny. There's a famous clip of him about the time period that we're talking about now, like the later 2000s. I think it was like 2012 or somewhere in that range. There's a clip of him online taking a chair shot, and it causes him to vomit.
Oh yeah.
Like he takes it and he's like, and he's all like dizzy, and then
old Marty Jannetty is the one that.
Yeah. So like, I know he was in rough shape towards the end, but he always was really happy to be around the fans. Like I remember going to Tony Luke's which is right around the corner from the ECW arena. And there was a show that obviously was on because it's the ECW arena. And I remember him just being around and like Tony Luke's, it's got a really long line. And if there's a Flyers game or a 76ers or an Eagles game, don't even bother going to Tony Luke's. The line is going to be down the street, around the block. It'll take forever just for you to get your cheesesteak. But after an ECW show, it's not bad. And I just remember him coming in and him just talking to fans and people wanting autographs, and had plenty of time for everybody and just being super fucking cool to everybody. And those were always my interactions with Balls. Like, you know, that weird interaction about him breaking his ankle, and then of course like him just being cool to fans.
Yeah. Rolling into the 2010s, Balls was really breaking down. His CTE, his drug use, his brutal lifestyle, it was all super catching up with him. And Balls would have his last match ever, picking up a win at DFC, a very death-proof Christmas, on December 6, 2015, in a flaming tables match.
Go out doing what you love.
Then sadly, April 12th, 2016, one day after his 44th birthday, Balls was watching Jeopardy at his home in New Jersey. He turned over to get comfortable when moments later, his wife noticed he was unconscious. She called 911, she tried CPR, but before medics could arrive, John Reichner had died of a heart attack at the age of 44. Final thoughts on the great Balls Mahoney.
Kind of the stuff I said a little bit earlier. Balls always was good to people. I avoided him because he's too nice, because I know I would end up in a 20-minute conversation with him.
Backtracking. Like,
yeah, like let me out of here. Like because I usually at these wrestling shows I have a lot to do, so I would always avoid someone like Balls who was overly friendly, want to talk, and it's like, this 20 minutes is nice and I'm glad I'm having this moment with you, but I really have to go set up the merch table, I have to set up the hard camera, I have to go over my match, I have to do this. So someone who is as friendly as Balls, like I try to avoid people like that at all costs at wrestling shows. So if people are like, he's a dick, yeah, because I have shit I have to do, and you're a nice person that wants to talk because that's what human beings do. So Balls was just one of those guys because he was too nice. He was too nice to the boys. He was too nice to the fans. He was just a super cool dude every time I ran into him. Even that weird interaction right by the bathroom, like there were more smiles than anything. Very overlooked wrestler. And when you talk about people that are lost way too early because of what professional wrestling has done to you, like he's a prime example of it. And people don't discuss it more, that damage that pro wrestling does to you and beats you up and grinds you up. Like people are like, oh, well, you know, Macho Man, he died young. No, he died from a heart attack. A heart attack that happened while he was in the car. If he was at home, they could have called the ambulance and he might have been fine. Yeah. That's not a tragedy of professional wrestling. He just had a heart attack, and if he was just around a place where they could have called the ambulance, he would have been fine. So claiming that on pro wrestling, treating you like a meat grinder and beating you up, not necessarily the case. But Balls Mahoney was perfectly that. He gave him his body, his brain, his heart to professional wrestling, and it just grinded it up in a meat grinder. He did it in probably one of the more violent eras of professional wrestling and treated it as if it didn't fucking hurt, and only solely cared about the reaction of the fans at the end of the day. And so when you talk about how pro wrestling chews you up and spits you out and what it does to your body and destroys you, I think Balls Mahoney is a prime example of that and should be held up and remembered in a great regard in giving everything to professional wrestling, and it was gone way too soon.
This is going to be easy to say as someone who personally didn't know Balls and as someone who is still alive. But he struck me as the type of dude where if you stopped him at the age of 20 and gave him two paths, like you're going to either be a wrestling legend, loved by millions, you're going to party, you're going to burn the candles at both ends, and you're going to die young, or you're going to be an accountant, live a safe life, and die at 75. I feel like Balls is picking pro wrestling 100% of the time. He was a super funny dude, a great wrestler, entertaining as hell, gone way too young, and, you know, it's sad.
That early ECW stuff, when all I had exposure to was WCW and WWF, it had a huge impression on me of just like, it was this whole new world of this dangerous, exciting stuff. And there's this dude who looks like a legit biker, like pulled a biker out of Hell's Angels, and you put him in a match and told him how to fucking take a drop toe hold, and he was on Paul's show. Balls did, I think, 8 shoot interviews. My list is 1999, 2009, 2012. There's a hotel shoot with Axl Rotten right before the TNA Hardcore Justice. He does a shoot on some guy's random fucking porch. He does a kayfabe commentary with Sean Oliver. He does the face-off shoot with New Jack. And then he does some shoot in a chair on a public access show called Wrestling Talk, just taking calls from fans. Like Jake said, he truly gave everything for the fans. He would get so excited even in shoot interviews. He would talk about, oh, I've done 450 splashes, which I'd still, if anybody knows any footage, I'd love to see it. He talks about like, oh, you don't even know. I'm gonna do shooting star presses to the outside. I don't think that ever happened because when I was thinking, I was like, should I do research to try to find that? Nah, because we would fucking know if Balls Mahoney did a shooting star press to the outside. That would be on tape. I guess Balls kind of went south towards the end, but in the shoots where he's talking about Candido and his kid, he has so much fucking love for that kid, and it's not just like, oh yeah, I have a son and I do lots of stuff for him. His words, his face, the inflection he puts on his words, he's there for him. Before he talks about all I used to do was just numb myself to the opportunities that I fucked up when I thought ECW was everything and I turned everything aside. But now I wake up and I think about my kid and I don't want to be hungover anymore. I look forward to the day because my kid means the world to me. Other surprises that I identify with, he talked about serial killers a lot in the shoot interviews. He confused Ed Kemper with Arthur Shawcross because he thought Shawcross cut his mom's head off, and I was the moron in my room going, no, that was Ed Kemper. He said he got fined in the WWF for reading. He wouldn't be on the monitor. He would be reading fucking Harry Potter. Balls Mahoney, a big, scary biker, reading fucking Harry Potter is something that caught me off guard. Balls Mahoney, he was a good fisherman, apparently. He was a fucking boat captain. Balls Mahoney could play golf. It was all these things. When you look at that dude, judging a book by its cover, you just can't do it. He was a UFC fan. We would have been the best of friends. And he always talked about dream matches. I always love when wrestlers talk about dream matches and shoot interviews because it shows the passion. I love when wrestlers show that they were fans to begin with. He wanted to have an exploding barbed wire match with Mick Foley, tons of thumbtacks, other gimmicks and weapons around the ring. In the shoot interview where he's talking about Chris Candido, in the last 45 minutes of that shoot, he shows how much love he had for him, and you can see how much he had to compose himself to get through the shit, because that was his childhood friend that died. And it was great fucking TV. All the other stuff I heard about Balls, I didn't give a shit because you could see in that moment how much he meant to him. And it was fucking amazing, man.
All right. Thanks for listening to this episode of Tim Bell Pod. If you want to support this little podcast we do, head over to patreon.com/TimBellPod. We have some cool tiers over there. We'll give you a shout out on the podcast, or else I'll have to start editing in 15 minutes of dick pill commercials, whether they sponsor us or not. I'll try to bring them up all organically, like, oh my god, Jake, how hard did Vader hit? Not as hard as my penis on these dick pills.
Dude, that's good.
So let's avoid that. Let's give us a rate and review wherever you're listening. Help us trick those goddamn algorithms into thinking we have a WWE guy on the show. We're at Tim Bell Pod on all the social medias. TimBellPod.com. Jake is very angry at me.
Jake's eyebrows went, huh?
Nicolessa on the social medias. Manscout is Manscout Manning on all the social medias. Micah is on JTrotter27.
Let It Ride, best movie ever. Balls! 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 Oh, balls!
Ladies and gentlemen, thank you for listening to the 10 Bell Pod. This is the Man Scout Jake Manning letting you know if you really want to support the pod, why don't you support us on Patreon? And it's very simple to do. Just log on to patreon.com, / and or /. We don't know how slashes work. We live in a digital age, and you can just Google everything. And actually, you know what? While you're all in there Googling 10 Bell Pod on Patreon, why don't you Google what's the difference between a / and a front slash? So while you're there and you figure that mess out, make sure you log on to patreon.com / and or / 10 Bell Pod.